All right, so let's talk about who beats Jake Paul. I went back and forth on making this video, but I'm just going to make it because I think I'm going to have fun doing it. We can go back and forth on the ethics of talking about Jake Paul or not, but if there was a time that I was going to talk about him, it would be now. He just got ranked by the WBA, which I think is a complete atrocity, obviously. The Chavez Jr. fight was a complete clown show, in my opinion. Chavez didn't throw anything back, and no one is saying this about this fight, but he didn't have a reason to either. Chavez is someone who's always had questionable motivations when it comes to his career. There's always been this narrative, of course, that he was basically pressured into his career by his father, Julio Cesar Chavez Sr., maybe the greatest Mexican fighter of all time. So let me ask this question. Why, if Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. is being paid, never wanted to box in the first place deep down, and is being paid enough money to retire, if he beats Jake Paul's going to want a rematch. So Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. literally has no reason to try to beat Jake Paul. In fact, he actively doesn't want to win the fight. He's actively in there wanting to lose. I'm telling you that. He can come out and say that that's not true, but he's making enough money to never have to box again, and he wants to never box again. And if he wins the fight, he's going to have to box again. And Jake Paul knows that, and it's why Jake Paul picked this fight, and the WBA ranked him. They ranked him above real cruiserweight professional boxers who have spent their entire careers trying to get to this position at far more pain and far more sacrifice than Jake Paul has ever had to make. So the first guy I wanted to put on this tier list is Craig Parker, 15 ranked cruiserweight in the world by the WBA. He's ranked beneath Jake Paul right now. I'm going to put him in KO/unanimous decision. And let me introduce you to the tiers here real quick. We have the RIP JP tier, which is where I think he's actually going to be in serious danger to his physical health if he fights this person. He's not just going to get knocked out. I think it could be even worse than that, and you'll see which fighters end up on that echelaon. Knocked cold. There's spoiler alert, there's going to be quite a few guys in this tier that I put in this tier, in the knocked cold tier. There's the KO/unanimous decision tier, the ones I think he'll give a close fight, and the ones I think he will win, which there are actually people on that level in this video. But Craig Parker is a 20-0 cruiserweight with 20 knockouts, who is now ranked beneath Jake Paul. Try to figure that one out. So if he's knocked out everyone he's fought in the professional ring, and he's a top 15 cruiserweight in the world, his last fight was at heavyweight, I really doubt that Jake Paul wants a single piece of this guy or is ever going to mention this guy's name. But I'd just like to say that he would knock out Jake Paul, and he's ranked beneath him, and the WBA has to know that. I'm going to try to be less salty for the rest of this video. And right back, and I'm going to break that promise immediately, because next is Jai Opetaia, who I don't think he has plenty of punching power, but he doesn't have RIP JP punching power. I think he's got knocked cold punching power, though. There's a good reason why Jake Paul has never mentioned Jai Opetaia. He is the best cruiserweight on the planet. A lot of people think he's going to go up to heavyweight, and a lot of people think he's going to go up to heavyweight and succeed in the same way that Alexander Usyk did. Now, that doesn't mean that he's as good as Usyk, but it means that he's a very special cruiserweight and the best cruiserweight on the planet, and there's a very clear reason why Jake Paul has called out a lot of other cruiserweight champions and not Jai Opetaia. And one of those cruiserweight champions that he's called out is Badou Jack, who has been a cruiserweight champion and a figure in the cruiserweight division and in the boxing world for a very, very long time. He's a name a lot of people in the boxing world know. He's been on the undercards. I specifically remember of some of the biggest fights ever. I remember he was on a bunch of Manny Pacquiao undercards back in the day. He's 41. He's clinging on to one of the cruiserweight belts, I think maybe the WBC. And he's only defended it one time in 3 years, albeit to a controversial majority decision. So I think Jake Paul sees Badou Jack as a bit of an old fighter that he can give a good fight to and potentially beat to essentially steal a world championship. When, is there really any reason why that belt shouldn't belong to Jai Opetaia too, if it's a cruiserweight belt? Like, let's be real. I think that's how a lot of combat sports fans feel nowadays, how a lot of people who grew up like me watching the UFC, thinking of a champion and an undisputed champion sort of as the same thing. Now, it's not that if you have a single belt in boxing, yeah, you're a champion. I absolutely respect that. But there's no reason why Jai Opetaia, other than, money, why Jai Opetaia can't go over, knock out Badou Jack, and take that belt too. Let's be real. If Badou Jack fought Jai Opetaia would win and take his belt from him. That being said, I do think Badou Jack actually would beat Jake Paul. I'm just not confident enough in a 41-year-old fighter who has only fought once in 3 years to for sure say that he's going to beat Jake Paul, because Jake Paul at this point has been training professionally as a boxer for a long time. And if Badou Jack has been slacking at all, then Jake Paul could come in and give, ask Badou Jack a lot of questions that he might not be able to answer, because his boxing skills, admittedly, I've been very salty about Jake Paul for most of the video, but his boxing skills have obviously improved. Now, Chavez Jr. literally didn't ask any questions of him, and he hasn't had, any real opposition on the level of any of the guys that I've said in this video yet. Every one of these fighters would be the toughest fight of his whole career. And it's kind of crazy that Jake Paul almost is a 30-year-old prospect. We're talking about Badou Jack, and that's going to be his hardest fight, you know? Next up is Gilberto Ramirez, and this is one of those guys that I think Jake Paul calls out to give his call-outs legitimacy. I'm stuck in between the RIP JP and the knocked cold tier. I'm going to go in the knocked cold tier. This guy is another one of the top cruiserweights in the world. He's 48-1. Why is Jake Paul even mentioning this man's name if he has any, care for his own health and not getting CTE? He's 48-1. His only loss is to Dimitri Bivol. What else do you want me to say? This is one of those three guys where when I'm going to go on a little side tangent here. I'll make a full video about this one day, but that I believe Dimitri Bivol very well may have the strongest resume in boxing in the world. He's got victories over Canelo, Beterbiev, and Ramirez. And a lot of people don't mention that victory over Ramirez, where Ramirez would be 49-0 right now, and it would be a much bigger story in the boxing world. Gilberto Ramirez looking for a 50-0 record. He's never going to get that now because Dimitri Bivol beat him. And it's just one of those fighters that Jake Paul calls out to give himself legitimacy, and I don't think he has any intention of ever fighting Gilberto Ramirez, and Gilberto Ramirez will knock him out cold. I have absolutely no doubt. The ultimate in these guys that Jake Paul keeps calling out, and that I think he thinks in his head, I'm worried he actually wants to fight him, is Anthony Joshua. I'm not even going to put Francis Ngannou on this tier list, because that's the one where, I don't think Jake Paul has ever talked about fighting Francis Ngannou, and I hope he never does, because that would kill him. I know that's very strong to say, but he probably wouldn't live. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but I don't think he would walk out of that. I don't think he'd make it out of that ring. And he's out here actually asking to fight Anthony Joshua, saying that would be some kind of a super fight, a crazy mega fight. It actually sounds like he's kind of pumped for the idea. And I think that Jake Paul thinks in his crazy, wild fantasy version of how his boxing career is going to go. Anthony Joshua does have bad nights, right? He's had bad nights during his career. 2 of them were to Usyk, so were those really bad nights. One was to Ruiz, where he got caught with an equilibrium rocking overhand right from a shorter fighter, which I guess Jake Paul maybe thinks he can do that to Anthony Joshua. I mean, good luck. And the other one was Daniel Dubois, when Anthony Joshua got over aggressive and tried to walk him down when he hadn't done any work to actually earn that forward movement in the fight, and he got knocked out. Honestly, pretty easily by Daniel Dubois. Daniel Dubois just had to measure that storm and land that counter shot, and the fight was over. None of those things are things that Jake Paul is capable of. Jake Paul has shown me absolutely no proof that he's going to be able to land some kind of miraculous punch that can floor Anthony Joshua. So in my mind, this is just another opponent where where Jake Paul has absolutely no intention of actually fighting him. Because it would seriously harm his physical health if you were to fight Anthony Joshua. And it makes me really sad that there could be enough money behind that fight that a sanctioning body would actually sanction it, because it's dangerous. Now, Tank Davis is the smallest guy that Jake Paul calls out. He is obviously an extremely legitimate knockout artist of a professional boxer who will absolutely knock out Jake Paul, I believe, regardless of size, no matter how big Jake Paul is. Now, it could be a TKO, but I'm just going to put him in the knocked cold tier because, that honestly probably is what's going to happen. You know what? I am going to have it in KO/UD because I'm going to have Lamont Roach in the same place. And I just want to have Lamont Roach here to basically say that, emphasize the point that Jake Paul really goes after low IQ fighters. He'll call out Tank Davis, but Lamont Roach basically out IQs, outsmarts, and outboxes Tank Davis, and he doesn't want a thing to do with him. And I think Lamont Roach would easily capture a points decision against Jake Paul, absolutely box circles around him. I'm just gonna put Canelo in the RIP JP tier. This one's funny. It's funny that Jake Paul ever agreed. There was like one day a couple months ago or something where there was a big like Jake Paul Canelo fight to be announced. And it was another attempt by Jake Paul to just gain that much more boxing legitimacy, basically saying, look, I can get Canelo to verbally agree. Look at how seriously I'm taken in the boxing world, and nobody is buying it. No Canelo fans are buying it. I don't think Canelo fans really want to see that fight. I think Canelo himself might want that fight because it would be the easiest work of his entire career. But that's a fight that I hope never happens for the sake of all boxing fans. As big of a spectacle and as big of a show as it would be. But to immediately contradict myself, I would be very psyched in the lead up to that fight to see Jake Paul get knocked out by Canelo. I think everybody would. And I think that's part of it, right? Jake Paul knows that, and he just plays into that. And that's a whole part of this whole Anthony Joshua Canelo thing and why he talks about dudes like that. And it's probably part of why he talks about Tank Davis too. He knows that part of him selling himself as a boxer is selling the image of himself getting knocked out flat on the canvas. And so that's why he talks about guys that can probably do that to him and calls them out. It's just part of the marketing gimmick. Next, we're going to do two guys that I just put in here arbitrarily because I wanted to. And I am talking about the current day version of each of these guys. And these guys are going to go in this tier. Now, look at the names in this tier. This tier, there's absolutely no disrespect intended in this tier. I just think that Floyd Mayweather would pretty easily cruise to a decision and TKO Jake Paul, even as, what is he, 40, 48 or something? I don't think it would matter. I think he would just dance circles around Jake Paul and use his boxing even today if he trained even a little bit for a fight that even a miniature version of what a monstrous Floyd Mayweather training camp used to be back during his prime. If there's even a shadow of the old Floyd left, I think he would pretty easily dispatch Jake Paul. I don't want to see this fight, though. It's two people who I'm just not the biggest fans of outside of the ring. I'm not the biggest fan of their personalities. I think a lot of people are, and it would be a ridiculous money show. It would be just like McGregor versus Mayweather with them throwing money in the air and just talking about how much money each of them have. Money, 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 blah, 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 blah. Next up, Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao is coming back this year, of course, to fight Barrios. I am not in love with that call. Even so, I think that 46-year-old Manny Pacquiao, it's funny. This really could be on close fight. I wish that I had the Barrios fight to watch. I wish that we actually had more than just accounts from people in Pacquiao's camp of how he's training so that we can really know what shape he's in. Because I'm just going back and forth between knocked cold and close fight just because I'm a big Manny Pacquiao fan. Honestly, I admit that I'm biased here. I'm going to put him in knocked cold. I'm going to just say he knocks Jake Paul out round one. It's another matchup that I hope never happens. I'm just putting this one here in posterity. There is a decent chance that Pacquiao's legs are just gone. He's 46, Paul's 29, and that age gap makes up the difference. So, there's a reasonable chance that you could just put this in close fight. If you're a Jake Paul fan and you're watching this for some reason, and you're still sitting here after I've been hating on him for the last however many minutes. This is a glorious moment for you. I put Manny Pacquiao in close fight. All right, cool. Now I'm going to put him back up to knocked cold. And here's Tommy Fury, and this is the one that I think he wins. I don't care about Tommy Fury. Go back to Love Island. I have no idea who you are. Apparently, this is the one guy who beat Jake Paul. I believe it. He has big biceps. Sure, run that fight back, and I will watch whatever UFC card is on that night and pretend that fight isn't happening. Next up, it's Conor McGregor. And this is going to be a close fight. Maybe even a Jake Paul win. Depending on how coked up Jake Paul manages to get Conor McGregor before the fight. If you can make Conor McGregor show up high enough, you might have a chance to win. Now, Conor McGregor is going to have a reach advantage if he enters any kind of training camp. But the problem is he even capable of really doing a training camp with how much drugs he's on right now? this man really is clearly suffering from severe substance abuse problems, and it would be borderline exploitive if Jake Paul were to make this fight. There is, of course, that famous footage of Conor McGregor essentially making an idiot out of himself in the presence of the Paul brothers on a bus at, I forget what event it was, but he was clearly coked out of his mind on this bus, and it was really embarrassing for Conor. So I don't think this is a fight that's ever going to happen, but in Conor's current state, I think this actually would be a close fight, sad as that is. Speaking of former UFC fighters, Kamaru Usman is really locked in right now and really in great form. Had a really great comeback win against Joaquin Buckley that a lot of people didn't expect. Now, I know this is a boxing match, so maybe just to give a little respect here and give a little handout to the Jake Paul fans, I think this could be a close fight. I don't know how good specifically of a professional boxer Kamaru Usman would be, but we're talking about a professional fighter here, a professional mixed martial artist with a 21-4 record, who, despite being 38 years old, is still fighting like he's in his absolute prime. And I think that if these two actually did face off, it would be something of a trap laid for Jake Paul. I think that Kamaru Usman is a brilliant strategist. He knows how to win fights, and Jake Paul would probably think that he's dealing with an old, washed-up has-been. Kamaru Usman would absolutely lay it on him in some way, at least. I think that Usman will win this fight, but it could be close. It's a boxing match, right? It's not MMA. And this is probably the fight that I want to see at this point. Now, I don't know enough about Jorge Masvidal's current life or how available he is to fight. I, of course, remember the boxing match against Nate Diaz that he did lose by majority decision. So I think there could be some kind of boxing career angle here for Masvidal. Masvidal is a very dangerous finisher. He's a very dangerous puncher. He would absolutely be, in my opinion, the most dangerous puncher that Jake Paul has faced so far. Keep in mind, Mike Tyson was a fresh and spry 57 when Jake Paul faced him a few months ago, and I think it would just be a good fight. I think that Jake Paul may actually it's kind of an even matchup in terms of traditional boxing, if you know what I mean, traditional boxing skills. Neither of them. Jake Paul, weirdly, actually, his boxing style is a little more like that of a traditionally trained boxer, and I think that evens it out when it goes up against Masvidal's superior power. It would be a very bad boxing match, but here I go again. Most Jake Paul fights are bad boxing matches. That's clearly not something that Jake Paul really cares that much about. The problem with this fight is that Masvidal is not a boxing champion. He isn't ranked by anybody. He's obviously thought of as more of a former MMA fighter, and it's really only people who know fighting and who really follow fighting closely who are aware of Masvidal's power and who will probably think that this might not be that terrible of a fight to watch. I'm a lot more inclined to think that Jake Paul is going to try to stay inside the traditional boxing structure now and actually find a belt off of somebody like a Badou Jack. So to me, this is all just an unfortunate reality. It's an unfortunate, yet another unfortunate effect of money on boxing and how money has always absolutely wildly corrupted this sport and corrupted combat sports. But that's kind of part of the intrinsic fabric of combat sports, and this is just another era of that. So congratulations, Jake Paul. Congratulations on exploiting, let's be honest, a very exploitable industry. And on that note, on that very bright and sunny and positive note, I will see you guys next time as you can enjoy looking at this beautiful tier list we have made of professional fighters, almost all of whom would knock out Jake Paul, and definitely every single one of whom would knock out Jake Paul in their prime, except for Tommy Fury, of course. Oh wait, Tommy Fury did beat Jake Paul. Never mind.